Hello, welcome back to Story Impact. I'm your host, Lisa Tolles. This series is intended to lift authors up, give them visibility into the book buying market, and to give them a voice and a presence to help readers connect with their vision in their stories. But really, I'm looking at what's behind the stories, the creators and visionaries, what their process looks like, where they get their inspiration, and the purpose that drives them forward day after day. As well as being your host for this series, I'm also a crime novelist, and you can find my books on Amazon and on lisatolles.com. All right, let's dive in. I want to tell you about my guest today. Julie Hatch is a pediatric nurse practitioner with decades of experience in neonatal and pediatric intensive care. She's worked on the front lines of high-stakes healthcare, advocating for the well-being of her patients. And in addition to her expertise in Western medicine, Julie expanded her practice by earning a master's degree in traditional Chinese medicine, which I think is so cool, to offer her patients a holistic approach to healing as well. Julie brings her extensive medical knowledge to readers with her debut novel, The Very Best of Care, a medical thriller about the ethical dilemmas and hidden dangers within the healthcare system. Wow, I read just the first 5 or 6 chapters, but I'm loving it so far. One reader said about The Very Best of Care, with sharp insight into the tangled relationships between hospitals, pharma, and insurance, Hatch crafts a gripping story that builds into a powerful crescendo. Julie, warmest welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. Nice to be here.
All right, so tell us about Sophie and what happens to her in this book.
Well, Sophie, who is 37 years old and finally pregnant after many attempts with IVF. This was her final attempt, and she got pregnant. And she lives in Brooklyn, but she works in New York City. And one day she's walking down the streets on her lunch break in New York and feels an unusual twinge. She's about 6 months pregnant. She feels a twinge in her belly that didn't, she's it was unfamiliar. So she thinks she should just go get it checked out. Probably nothing. So she goes into the hospital, gets checked out, and before she knows it, she has delivered her baby 3.5 months early, and who's now then in the neonatal intensive care unit, and she is just left thinking, what just happened?
Wow. And I know a lot happens to Sophie in this book too. I've read descriptions of the story, and I can already see that just in kind of the opening chapters that she's left kind of reeling, like, oh my God. I mean, so worried about her own health, worried about the health of her baby, but I mean, like, who's taking care of both of them right now? I mean, so the issue of like trust really comes across for me quickly in the novel, and I think that's probably what you intended. Was there one thing, like one inciting event that made you decide to leverage your successful medical career in this direction to write fiction, or was it kind of a combination of things?
I think after spending so much time in medicine and intensive care, um, yeah, the stories just build up. There was one particular event that caused me that led to this book. But there's I've been in it for so long. There's just stuff that needs to come out of me. There's so many stories that I want to tell.
Mm.
And being a fiction writer, you can sort of embellish and have a little bit of fun with it.
What do you think about how a lot of people say that they write fiction to teach readers something? I had a guest recently who has said that too, and I feel like as a reader, as a fiction reader, I learn a lot from fiction. I mean, like it's not the same kind of level of rigor, of course, as reading a nonfiction book, but I mean, like there are lots of authors that kind of impart a lot of knowledge within the context of a made up world.
Yeah, and I have started to realize that with this book because after I wrote it, I'm like, okay, so what's the point of it? I wrote it to entertain people, but then as I think about it and think about it and need to start talking about it, I realize that yeah, there are bits and pieces in there that are informative to people in the real world, and I'm working on a second book, and I really want that book to make a point. I really want lessons and things to come through on that one. Now that I'm aware of, yeah, like you say, that's possible. Fiction can absolutely teach us things.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, you've been like kind of deep in the trenches for like 3 decades, and I'm wondering, was writing this book kind of therapeutic or cathartic for you in some way, like seeing and witnessing all of these injustices across the healthcare landscape?
Yeah, it is absolutely therapeutic. I think any writer would say that writing is therapy. And yes, this was this was definitely therapeutic and stuff that I could needed to bring out, needed to express through my writing, which I love to do.
Hmm. And are you writing full time or are you still working full time while you're doing this?
I'm actually working as an acupuncturist now. I've left the hospital 10
Oh,
years ago. So I'm
hmm.
working very, very part-time for myself as an acupuncturist, which is lends to a lot of time to be able to write, which is I'm really lucky.
Okay, awesome. Um, have you had any backlash from the Western medical community about kind of, you're not like d divulging things because of course fiction is like made up, but I mean like really my belief is there's really no such thing as fiction because we're pulling from
Hmm.
what's within us, what we already know. I mean, any like bad feelings or like consternation from anyone in the previous medical community you were in?
Not yet. The book is only about 2 weeks old out in the world. And you're the second person to ask me that. And I'm curious to see what happens. I'm hoping that in the fall I'll be going up and speaking at the bookstore next to the university hospital where I worked. And
Oh,
hopefully people will show up for that. Because I'll be curious to see what people say. I don't know. So no, to this point I have not gotten any backlash, but
well,
I'm ready.
Well, I'm so excited to see that you have channeled all of your years of experience into a successful story like this, because I think that brings your character and the context and what happens to Sophie so much authenticity. I mean, I really
Hmm.
do care about that as a reader. I love nonfiction and I love fiction as well, but I really like that authenticity. I mean, you really have like the street cred, so to speak.
Yeah, thanks. Yep.
So, can you share some details of what your experience has been like getting your debut novel published? I mean, someone brand new into the convoluted publishing industry. I think viewers who are aspiring authors would love to hear some of your reflections.
Yeah, well, you're obviously well versed in it. This past year, I suppose, of the publishing has been a very enlightening, confusing experience. I did at first I would go to Thriller Fest in New York City and I shopped the my book around to agents, spent 6 months to 9 months doing that, didn't have any luck. And then somebody suggested to reach out to She Writes Press with Brooke Warner, who she's a female publisher and she likes to publish female authors. So I did, and I was accepted by her. I think my book was well edited. It had been edited several times. I thought that it was in pretty good shape, and so Brooke accepted it. And the publishing, she does, so working with her, that's all I know about the publishing industry at this point is working with She Writes Press. And she's really great. It's a great company. They are very legit. And they helped come up with a cover. They put the whole thing together. And it's been very exciting. And I'm getting ready to do it a second time. And I think I'm a little bit better prepared now because it's slow. It's and there's a lot to learn to it. And still, even Brooke, who's been doing this for years and years and years, she's still learning and things are changing and all the time. And I just am sort of going along for the ride.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying it and that you're enjoying working with this publisher too. I know that relationship is absolutely critical. I am super happy with my publisher, and it just feels so good to kind of have someone behind you, believing in what you're doing and like, willing to kind of set those things in place to
Yeah.
take it forward. I mean,
Yeah.
anything you can share about how you developed the story? You got the initial idea. I don't know if Sophie came to you first or if the premise of this book came to you to you first, but I'm curious. This is a very layered story. I mean, like, did you work with a critique group or a developmental editor, or like, how did you put it all together?
I did work with a developmental editor. He's a really helpful editor. And when I wrote the first version, I was all about plot. I knew exactly what I wanted the story to be about and how it was going, mostly how it was going to go, and even this kind of a little bit of a funky ending. I knew that. And then he said, "Well, Julie, what about the characters? You need to make characters that people want to read about for 300 pages."
Mhm.
So that was missing first time around. So I went back and did some character development. So to answer your question, it was all the concept of the book was front and foremost on my mind. And then I had to work on the character development, which was fun, which was definitely a lot of fun.
Hmm. Did Sophie talk to you during this process?
Oh,
Did you?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I love that because when I get stuck, um, probably even beginning, but when I get stuck, I pull out my pen and paper to do the longhand writing. I say, "All right, Sophie, what's supposed to happen next? Or what are you going to say to this person? Or, how are you going to get out of this one?" And she talks to me. And the same thing with all of my characters who I need to figure out what's happening. And you nod, like I bet you understand what I'm talking about. People may think that it sounds crazy, but I do. I absolutely talk with her.
That's, well, and she talks back too, and she
Oh
gives
yeah,
need. Yeah, I think, like from the outside looking in, it must seem like what we do is a bit schizophrenic, I mean, like, but that's the creative process is, I mean, like it's different for everyone. And when I do it, if I'm stuck, I have what's called like a family meeting, and I kind of gather all the characters like in a circle, and I'm like kind of taking notes, and I'm like, what are we going to do about this? And what do you want to do about this? So same as
great.
do.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of a leap of faith, but I mean, yes, I do feel like the answers come to me when I kind of put it in their hands.
Yeah. And that's sort of, I also think that that's the more fun part of writing. I do definitely have my nature is to have an outline and to go boom, boom, boom through life with a plan. But
Mhm.
it's so much more fun when you can step back and just let it flow, let the characters let tell you what to write. And that's does sound crazy, but the great stuff comes out that way, really, not planned.
Exactly. Um, are there any things that you think authors typically get wrong when writing about medicine in the course of fiction? So, like any pitfalls that other authors should avoid, or any recommendations?
The only thing I don't think is a pitfall, I was reading a bunch of medical thrillers for a an assignment that I was doing. And this might be a little bit of a generalization, but the male writers, I was trying to find comps for mine. So they needed to have females in the story or not be about babies or children necessarily, but there needs to be a female component to the story. And the males didn't quite get it right. They didn't get I guess the emotion or the feeling that I like to wanted to bring into my book. So it's not that they got it wrong. It's they're from a male perspective.
Different. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yep. Yep.
Yep. I loved Robin Cook's novel Coma, and I love that movie even more. We've watched that movie so many times. So, as a medical insider, do you think that story was realistic? And this is a tricky question because we generally trust the medical community to take care of us when we're sick. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I'm sure you'd agree that there's a lot of crap and a lot of politics that gets into how that care is administered. Any
Yeah.
thoughts there?
There is definitely a lot of politics. There's definitely the mighty dollar that comes into place. That comes into with insurance companies, which I had virtually nothing to do with when I was working in the hospital, thank goodness. There was a big buffer between the practitioners and the insurance companies. But that absolutely comes into play. And I think that, well, in my book, one of the last scenes was was a tip to Robin Cook from the end of his coma book, and so back to I think what you originally asked was it possible? Was it realistic? And that was written a really long time ago.
Mhm.
And I would say now, absolutely, it's possible. And I think that the idea was there. I don't know, no. 50s, 40, 50 years ago when he wrote the book. Maybe sounded a little outlandish, but the fact that the idea was there tells me that, yeah, it's eventually it could be possible. And yeah. And so the last scene in my book, my editor said, Julie, this is a little sci-fi-ish. And I said, yeah, it can happen. So
See, that's that authenticity that you bring. And, as a reader, I love reading books that are like, sort of on that cusp. They seem like they're kind of fringe. And then I look who wrote the book and like their years of experience, and I'm like, wow, could this have
mm,
actually happened? And that makes it more memorable to me because it makes it more real.
yeah, yep, yeah,
Um, what
yeah.
what kind of books do you read? Like, what are you reading right now?
I'm reading about the Dalai Lama.
Oh, okay, nice.
I'm reading about yeah, his 90th birthday is coming up. So I'm an acupuncturist and I'm love Buddhism and Taoism and um so that's a and what's the other one? Another spiritual kind of a book, which is a nice balance to the um thrillers and medical thrillers. I love Jodi Picoult. I love Stephen King. I love Robin Cook. I love medical thrillers.
Mhm.
But I also like just a good, warm, nice, pleasant fiction book.
Uh-huh.
So, and unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of time to read these days, but those are, I'm sort of all over the place, but those are my favorite authors.
Michael Palmer is a
Ah,
thriller author that I love. I've read a lot of his books, and yeah, I just love that. I love that kind of subgenre.
yes. I like his books too. When I talk about the males who don't quite get it right, he got it right. What was the book? Saving Megan, he wrote, and it was about a family and a daughter. And I love that book. That was well, I haven't read all of his books, but I absolutely love that book of his. Did a good
Okay,
job with that.
great. I haven't read that, so now that's my beach reading. Excellent.
There you go.
I wrote a book called Terror Bay, and it's a psychological thriller, and I did a lot of research on traumatic brain injury recovery for that book, and I talked to
Oh.
several friends who are doctors. One is an ER nurse, another is a psychologist, and basically I like feel like I did my due diligence as an author to get it right. Have you been a consultant to authors doing similar research for their novels because of your medical history?
Not yet. I am not, have not been a consultant. I would love to. I think that'd be really interesting. And I think that that book of yours sounds, really interesting. That's loaded. Traumatic brain injury. That's a really
Oh,
loaded topic.
oh man, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we can talk about that offline if you want to read it and if you have any ideas about what I got wrong. I mean,
Oh
I
no.
I won't be happy to hear that because it's already published, but I'm continually learning and I want to know. I mean, if I
Mm,
didn't do my due diligence, and there's something that I could have done to make it more authentic, I want that information. I mean, I want to keep growing and getting better.
yeah, yep. But yeah, no, nobody has asked me to consult on their books yet.
Okay.
Hopefully,
But
maybe.
but you'd be willing to. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So you said that you're writing another book. Is The Very Best of Care intended to be the first in a series, or are you going to write standalone thrillers? What's your feeling right now?
It's not a series. There is um, they're both very much standalone, but there is an association. The character in the second book was a baby in the first book, but you don't have to
Oh,
know
no
that. You don't
way.
have to have read the first book to then be able to enjoy the second book. But there is a little bit of a connection.
Uh-huh. That's cool.
Uh,
I'm doing that now too. The book that I'm almost about to finish, there are two characters that it has in common with another book that came out. So I mean, it's not technically a sequel, but if someone cared about that set of characters, they could read this one. But yeah, I
yeah, that's nice.
standalone thrillers. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, Julie, what do you want to leave readers with after they read this book?
I want to leave readers with a feeling of caring for Sophie's love for her child. I try to bring across the relationship between a mother and her child and how she will always fight like a mama lion for her baby to protect him. And that's kind of for me, that's what life is all about. Is new life, little, children and relationships between parents and kids and the love and compassion that is between them. So that's, all this thriller stuff is page turning and really exciting, but it's the emotion between the mother and child that I really want people to, I hope comes across in the pages.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it does. I mean, I'm roped into the story, and I'm only like 5 or 6 chapters in. So I'll read the Michael Palmerberg after I finish yours. But
Okay.
all right, so you can find Julie's books at juliehatchbooks.com. Julie, thank you so much for joining me today, and it's been wonderful to chat with you. And for those of you tuning in today, enjoy reading The Very Best of Care by author Julie Hatch, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Good to be here.